Hello everyone, welcome to Straight Talks F1. Who said this season was going to be boring? Where are those F1 fans now who were complaining about the boring, monotonous dominance of Max Verstappen? The Australian Grand Prix has proven them wrong. Or let me rephrase that. Carlos Sainz has just proven them wrong. It was the Carlos Sainz show in Australia. Man, Sainz loves to steal someone else's thunder. The last two times it has been Max Verstappen. In fact, all three of his race wins Silverstone, Singapore, Australia. In all these races, Verstappen had an issue and it was Sainz who took the glory. So, yeah, all the complaining people, they may have been sleeping because it was an early race start in Australia. But regardless, Australia always serves up a banger race. And from the sporting context, this was a banger race. Given the way Max Verstappen has been dominating, to see him have an issue and retire from the race is a big deal. And Australia is always a race of attrition. We see DNFs, retirements, several cars will have issues. Anything can happen. We saw that last year with the late restart, and the same unpredictability came this year too. But kudos to Carlos Sainz. What a comeback story this is going to be. Just 2 weeks ago, he had an appendicitis surgery and he comes back to Australia to win the Grand Prix. As said after Bahrain, Carlos Sainz looks like a man on a mission. And he's shown that again. From Max Verstappen's perspective, 9 wins in a row, he was going to equal his record. Completed 10 wins in Monza last year. Did not win Singapore, so it stayed there. From Japan onwards till date, it could have been 10 wins. And apparently the next race is Japan too, so he could have completed 11 race wins. But I guess it's just not meant to be. It's not easy to win so many races in a row. So Verstappen's tally goes back to 0 if he wants to set another record. And the next race is again Japan. So he could be ominous there. Last time around, that's what happened. Sainz won in Singapore, and then Max showed his dominance in Japan again. But let's not call off the party, because Carlos Sainz has won in Australia. It was the Sainz show in Melbourne. It definitely was. It's insane to even think about coming back from an appendicitis surgery and just driving a Grand Prix distance of 58 laps, let alone winning the race. That is where Carlos Sainz was taking the Driver of the Day award for sure. Well, of course, Ferrari were looking competitive. They were promising throughout the weekend. The race pace looked promising. In qualifying as well, Sainz looked like the driver who could challenge Max Verstappen for pole. Of course, Verstappen did Verstappen things, took pole position, but the Red Bull wasn't looking quite comfortable. The RB20 wasn't looking as dominant as it has been so far in Bahrain and Saudi. That may have been because Australia is sort of an outlier, so that may have been difficult for Red Bull to get the car honed in for the particular track setup. But that's one thing to have a Red Bull car with issues, Verstappen facing issues, and whole another thing to take advantage of it. And Sainz was flawless at that. On the start, he kept within Verstappen's range. That's what Max Verstappen does. He gets the lead on the race start and then opens up the gap to over a second and goes out of range. That did not happen in Melbourne. Sainz kept in DRS range and that got him the overtake on lap 2. Now many would argue that Verstappen may have been facing the brake overheating issues beforehand. Fair enough, that could be a possibility. But then Ferrari did not have any issues. That is part and parcel of the game. If your car has issues, you retire from the race. Ifs and buts will always come for any team. There can be ifs and buts for Leclerc, there can be ifs and buts for Norris, Piastri, everyone. So yeah, on the one-off occasion where Verstappen and Red Bull experienced issues, Ferrari and Sainz were there to capitalize on it. So definitely can't take away the credit from Sainz. Perfectly executed race. And again, not to forget the fact that he could have had some pain from the surgery The G forces of an F1 car work in such a way they put pressure on your body, the neck, the lower abdomen, everything gets affected. So amazing stuff from Carlos Sainz. Last year, another Carlos said, Carlos Alcaraz, Spanish never die. And that's true. Many people have experienced that. Be it Alcaraz, Rafael Nadal, Fernando Alonso, and Carlos Sainz. Spaniards just never let up. Spanish athletes keep going, irrespective of any adversities. Fernando Alonso has numerous instances of not giving up despite facing the worst circumstances in many races. The never give up attitude really materialized in Australia for Sainz, and he virtually won the race unchallenged. Leclerc and Norris, they were there or thereabouts, but their pace was no match for Carlos. Leclerc may have managed this race because he knew Lando Norris was coming from behind for P2, but at the same time, Leclerc did not look at one with the car throughout the weekend. In qualifying as well, he abandoned his final run. And Lando Norris, the McLaren don't have as much pace as the Ferrari. That's the reality for now. They need to bring upgrades. So they had a good strategic battle to take P2, split the Ferraris, but it did not work out for him. And Sainz was of course clear of them. All in all, a Ferrari 1-2, where Red Bull were nowhere to challenge for the win, it does encourage the fans a little bit. These are encouraging signs of progress towards the front of the field again. Winning the third race of the year after two dominant wins by Max Verstappen. That's good, that's definitely good. Especially when everyone expected Verstappen to come here and dominate and extend his winning streak. So fingers crossed the trend continues and we get multiple race winners rather than a dominant season like 2023. Now, McLaren, a good day at the office for them, more like an offside in Melbourne, a 3-4 finish in Australia. They'll take it. They would have taken it before this race weekend started. And that's what McLaren do. Happy go lucky team. They have the process sorted now. No major issues. They know what they are going to do with their car. The upgrades are coming. So when these kind of opportunities come, the favorite of the race is not there in the race, retires, you capitalize the chance, and that's what McLaren do. Overall, a very well executed race from McLaren, I would say. The team owner's call was a bit questionable. If we think from an emotional perspective, even I felt Oscar Piastri, home race, running third in the podium place. The team order swap, was it necessary? But then when we look at it from a team perspective, it makes sense. It's quite logical. They would want to maximize their chances. There was a possibility for P2. If Norris would have caught Leclerc past him, it would have been 3 more points for them. So makes sense why they did it. And even Piastri was fine with it. He knew his pace is not as good as Lando. So if Norris has the chance to finish second, he would not want to hold him up. So great teamwork from McLaren. Now that's a different thing that Norris still did not get P2. That's more down to the car. Ferrari has much better pace right now than McLaren. They need to put upgrades on that car to match up with Ferrari, take the fight to Red Bull maybe. So that will take time. They're saying they'll bring upgrades during May when the European leg starts. But Norris still finished on the podium. And for anyone who says Norris is often the guy who finishes second, here's a record he's beaten in this race of drivers with the most podiums without a race win. 14 podiums for Lando Norris without a race win in F1. He's broken this record. Nick Heidfeld was the previous record holder for 13 podiums without any race wins. So kudos to Lando Norris. But yeah, jokes apart, he definitely did not have the pace. His car did not have the pace to win the race. Ferrari were just a bit better than them. They know the car needs to be quicker. And for Norris to get that monkey off his back of not having a race win yet, McLaren need to bring those upgrades as soon as possible. Because from his peers, George Russell has won, Sainz has won 3 now, Leclerc has of course been winning 5 wins to his name. In fact, that is less than what he could have. So Leclerc and Norris have some catch up to do. But Norris wants to break that duck as soon as possible. Get a race win on the board. Get this monkey off his back. Who knows? Piastri could get a win before Norris. Fingers crossed. But a Piastri home podium could have been really great. Unfortunately, he did not have the pace. Still, for McLaren, a very good result, I would say. 3-4 finish in Australia. He will take it, Lando will take it. So, good times ahead for McLaren mostly. Now, Mercedes. They perhaps got off the wrong side of the plane in Melbourne because nothing went right for them. Well, according to their quote high standards, Hamilton struggling in FP2, then a Q2 elimination in qualifying, and then a DNF in the race due to an engine failure. That is Hamilton's worst nightmare coming true. And with every race like this, he might be saying, thank God I've taken the call to go to Ferrari. Because that Mercedes W15, it just wasn't there. It was consistently unsettled. The car was on a knife edge, Hamilton said. And through the fast sections of the track in qualifying, and there are many on this Albert Park circuit now, the car looked very iffy. It wasn't dialed in and definitely did not work as per Hamilton's optimal expectations. On the other hand, George Russell was having a rather decent weekend. Finished P7, he was running in P7, chasing Fernando Alonso in the last laps of the race. And then, oh god, that penultimate lap. It was a scary, scary crash from George Russell. From a driver perspective, that is not how you would want to end your race. On a 45-degree angle, not knowing which car is coming in the middle of the track. And it can be so difficult to get out in that position, quickly react to anything that's going to happen. He was shouting red flag, red flag, red flag. They only called a VSC. It should have been a safety car at least, what I felt. Given it was just one lap remaining, maybe they thought VSC makes sense. But even if they would have red flagged the race, that would have made no difference at all. Because there were no major battles happening for any positions. But glad that Russell got out of the car without any issues. Now what has happened is Fernando Alonso has got a 20-second penalty for potentially dangerous driving. So it was actually Alonso who braked at the 100-meter mark right before turn 7, which is a very negligible corner given it's a long straightaway out of turn 6 to turn 9, and that caught out Russell, causing him to go off track, hit the wall, and then end up how he did in the middle of the track. So makes sense why Alonso was given that penalty. It was a drive-through penalty, converted post-race, becomes worth 20 seconds. But again, did he do it on purpose? That will always be under question. Alonso will comment on it, but I don't think he's going to question it as such. He and George Russell have a decent relationship. Could be his teammate next year. But it does not seem like Mercedes is a team Alonso would want to sign up for right now. A double DNF in Australia. Their pace is definitely not near McLaren or Ferrari anywhere right now. Hamilton was very unhappy after qualifying. Sort of made a sarcastic jab. He's quite used to Q2 eliminations and everything. Well, he was quite used to winning races, dominating championships for 7 or 8 years. So this is a good change of pace, I think, for the past few years. But deep down, he'll be thanking that Ferrari, his team next year, has won the race, a 1-2 finish, because Mercedes have a lot of work to do. They are clueless right now. Ferrari look miles ahead of them. They seem like the closest challengers to Red Bull. who have the ability to challenge for the championship and can deliver that kind of a car. For Mercedes, it was a complete nightmare down under, not the Australian GP Toto Wolff would have wanted. Now, a big storyline that has dominated the weekend: Williams. Alex Albon goes and crashes in FP1 at turn 7, huge damage, his chassis beyond the repairs or beyond quick repairs at the track so he can get back into action. His engine and gearbox damaged badly. Those can be replaced, but the chassis is something that needs extensive repairs. And James Vowles said that they cannot repair the chassis at the track. They have to send it back to HQ, to the factory, and they did not have a spare chassis, which surprised many people in the paddock. So Williams had to take the tough call to choose one of their drivers to drive the remaining car. And of course, logically, they chose Albon. Logan Sargent hasn't scored points, just scored the 1 point in the USA last year, courtesy of the disqualifications. So makes sense why they chose Albon. Still, many were debating why did Sargent have to pay for Albon's mistake. That's a whole different debate. But how did this happen? Let's look at what is going on at Williams. So apparently, they were using Microsoft Excel to track all their car parts, from a nut bolt to the car floor to the front wing. When James Vowles came, they changed the design philosophy of the car, and the car parts, the number of parts, went from hundreds to thousands. Saying they were managing 20,000 parts on Excel, just imagine how tedious the job could be to maintain an Excel spreadsheet with 20,000 car parts and all the details about it. James Vowles was crazy about it when he found out, and they changed that system over the winter, put a digital system in place, which should have been the case in the first place, given these F1 teams are worth millions of dollars and they have lots of technological partners coming in. But yeah, such were the inefficient processes that led to a delay in production, many inefficiencies in their production process too. And it was evident given the car got completed just days before testing. So all these delays, all those inefficiencies, they piled up, and we are seeing the butterfly effect of it now. They had no time to plan for a spare chassis, build a spare chassis, and it caught them out in Australia. Now apparently, even for Japan, they cannot produce a spare chassis because they have to repair Albon's chassis. And this is not a problem of investment or personnel. They have enough people, they have enough investment. It's just a problem of their production process. It's just a problem of the planning and inefficiency in planning. So James Vowles has some work to do on fundamental level to change all these things culturally. Then only Williams have a chance to progress up the grid. Or else such kind of embarrassing situations can keep happening. He himself admitted it was embarrassing to not have a spare chassis. And eventually, after all the shenanigans, benching Sargent, giving Albon the car, Alex Albon could not score points. And the double whammy for them is two of their rivals, RB and Haas, both have scored points. Both Haas drivers and Yuki Tsunoda in the points. Not that Logan Sargent would have scored points or Albon did not put enough efforts in there. But overall, it's not a good look for Williams. It is not a good outcome they would have wanted from this race. The previous two races in Australia, they have done well. Especially in 2022, Albon doing a marathon stint on the hard tyre, pitting on the penultimate lap to get a single point. Sadly, he could not replicate that kind of a miracle in this race because points are coming at a premium for the teams in the bottom half. Hulkenberg scoring a single point in Saudi was a big deal. And again, Haas have scored 3 points in this race. Tsunoda scored 6 points. So that is going to make a huge difference. Overall, Williams were always going to lose out from this kind of a makeshift weekend. Right from Albon's crash, the weekend got away from them more and more. Now, a few honorable mentions. Haas and Tsunoda. Now, top drivers DNFing Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton out of the race is music to the ears of teams like Haas and RB and Sauber and Williams. Only two of those teams could capitalize on it, Haas and RB. Albon couldn't get it for Williams. Usually, Albon is the guy who gets these big results, a P7 or P8 finish, to get some important points for Williams. That's what it did last year. But this time it was both of the Haas drivers and Yuki Tsunoda. Now, Kevin Magnussen overtook Alex Albon, this time not getting any penalties for it. And when Russell had his incident on the last lap, Magnussen got promoted to P10. Apparently, the overtake on Albon was such an important move for Magnussen that got him points and a double points finish for Haas. Hulkenberg with 2 points in P9, Magnussen P10. Haas is doing really well with their race pace. It's a night and day difference between last year and this year. The way that Haas car is working in races, the tire deck much better. Now on the other hand, for RB, it was just Yuki Tsunoda. Don't know what are the problems with that car. Is Tsunoda overdriving it? Getting it into places it may not merit? But on the other hand, even Ricciardo is struggling with it a lot. Qualified only 18th and Tsunoda qualified 8th. And from 8th he had a fabulous race execution. Finished in P8 and after Alonso's penalty got the promotion to P7. 6 points for the team. Very crucial first points of the season. And promotes them to P6 in the standings. So Tsunoda is definitely carrying and leading the RB team right now. Which is Ricciardo's job from Red Bull's perspective. Starting from 18th at his home race, he was always going to be on the back foot. Apparently he's been on the back foot since 2021. But yeah, starting from 18th, you would always want to recover in the race. But you would hope for something to happen, a safety car, a red flag that goes in your favor. So it was given he will endure a difficult race, always playing the catch-up game. It was quite difficult for Ricciardo to get points today. And it tells us the story why Tsunoda is doing so well. Ricciardo himself admitted that qualifying is important. Qualifying was important in this race. So he was always on the back foot. Ever since he got that lap deleted, it was his mistake. Ended up P18. And it did not help his cause. In the broader perspective, it is not helping his ambitions to take the Red Bull seat of Sergio Perez. And speaking about Sergio Perez, he perhaps turned up in his racing point because he was nowhere near the race lead. Qualified in the top 3, lost positions at the start, and then finished in P5, 56 seconds of the race lead. Was the Red Bull that bad? Did Verstappen lose position at the start on merit? Ideally, Checo should have been to capitalize and win this race when Max has suffered an issue. He was P2 in Bahrain and Saudi, so one would have expected Perez to be there, challenge Sainz for the win. But yeah, an anonymous P5 finish, not the race Sergio Perez would have wanted. A forgettable one, I would say, given how dominant that car is. How much performance Verstappen extracts from it. At least he could have been on the podium. That was the bare minimum. So he would hope to bounce back in Japan along with Verstappen. But yeah, those were some of the other storylines that unfolded in this race. But the weekend was about Carlos Sainz, his comeback, and to cap off his comeback from surgery to take a race win. Just insane stuff from Carlos Sainz. Now, there are a few uncanny trends I caught up with about Carlos Sainz winning races in F1. Whenever Verstappen doesn't win, which has been a regular eventuality after 2022, Sainz is often there to take the win. More precisely, whenever Verstappen suffers an issue, all three of his race wins, as I said earlier, Silverstone, Singapore, and now Australia, have come when Verstappen has suffered some issue, either DNF from the race or finished the race in the bottom half of the points, which is not the position Verstappen prefers ever. Another trend is in all three of Sainz's wins, George Russell has crashed. He's crashed out of the race. In Silverstone, it was on lap 1 itself. In Singapore, on the last lap, the infamous crash into the exit of turn 10, and now on the penultimate lap at turn 7 in Australia. And one more trend, not related to his wins, but whenever Sainz is on the podium, Hamilton sort of has a bad race or a forgettable race. Some sort of issue happens to Hamilton. In Brazil 2019, Hamilton got a penalty and got off the podium, and Sainz got on the podium post race. In Hungary 2021, Hamilton and Mercedes did that error with the intermediate tires at the start, where he started alone, and Sainz got on the podium after the race because Sebastian Vettel got disqualified. But that does count because Hamilton struggled a lot in that entire race. And then Abu Dhabi 2021, everyone knows. Hamilton second, yes, but Sainz was third, and everyone knows what happened to Hamilton that day. But yeah, this weekend, this Australian Grand Prix race, it belonged to Carlos Sainz. It delighted everyone. I can't highlight the fact enough that he's coming back just 2 weeks after his appendicitis surgery to perform like he has and win this race. Hats off Carlos Sainz. And overall a good strategic race. Australia always serves up a good race. Red Bull's not being on top, Ferrari and McLaren in the top 4. Such a feel-good result. And I said after Saudi that it will get better. The season is not going to be boring and an uber dominant one like 2023. Verstappen winning 19 races. Maybe he will, but after what we saw in Australia, maybe he won't. Anything is possible. We cannot rule out the season just as yet. 21 races still to come. Anything can happen. That RB20 is not a bulletproof car. It is not that it may not have any issues. And Max Verstappen too can make mistakes. He's not an invincible driver. He may have showed himself like that, but he's human too after all. He can make mistakes. There can be drivers like Sainz and Leclerc and Norris who can challenge him. So let's not write off the season just as yet. We can get such exciting races going forward. We've seen the proof in Melbourne. Fingers crossed, many such races happen. Not with Verstappen retiring. In fact, him being there and someone like Sainz or Leclerc or Norris or Hamilton, anyone who has a car underneath them to challenge for the win, that would give us real good entertainment in this season. So that's all from my end in this Australian Grand Prix review. Couple of weeks later is Japan, one of my favorite racetracks. I'm hoping it's as good as Australia, if not even better, fingers crossed. So arigato and stay tuned till then.